Welcome to Sports Management Podcast, where you will hear interesting sports management professionals share their stories, experiences, and passion for the sports management industry. I am your host, Marcus Philipsson. Welcome to a new episode of Sports Management Podcast. And today we have a great guest. His name is James O'Brien, and he is the Director of International Operations at Formula One Experiences team. He has been with Formula One now for 15 years, holding a variety of demanding roles. In addition to his work at Formula One, James is also a voiceover actor, stage presenter, and an instructor of presentation skills. James and I talk about how Formula One has evolved over the years, the cars, the safety, and the fan experience, among other things. We also talk about the logistics aspect and how it's possible to transfer all the equipment and cars from country to country in order to put on first-class events. And as icing on the cake, James also demonstrates some of his voiceover skills. James O'Brien, welcome to Sports Management Podcast.
Well, thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
I'm so glad that you're on. And you have a very, very interesting job. You are the Director of International Operations at the Formula One's Experience team. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do there and what your role includes?
Yeah, for sure. Well, F1 Experiences is a joint venture between a company called Quint Events based in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Formula One. And we're the only authorized experiences provider for Formula One. So really, it is what it says on the tin. We provide all of the experiences. So all of the things that bring fans closer to Formula One, such as our track tours, our insider access, hospitality, special access, all those sorts of things is what we do. And my role as Director of Operations is to lead the team and make sure it happens, basically.
And when it happens, what can the fans and guests expect from the experience you provide?
Well, it does vary. And what we try and do is cater for every fan, from casual through to the real hard. We have a series of fan packages, and they have inclusions on a Thursday and a Friday evening as well. So on the Thursday evening, you'll come into the circuit in the afternoon, and you access onto the main straight, which is hallowed turf. I mean, it's the start-finish straights where the checkered flag waves. It's amazing. So we'll take you onto that start-finish straight. What we'll then do is pop you on the back of the driver's parade truck, and you'll get a lap around the track. And what we have is ex-racing drivers who will tell you about the circuit, what to look out for, historical action that may have occurred, that kind of thing. And we'll also give you a photo on the grid with the 2 championship trophies. There's been a lot of discussion about those trophies. People say, they're fake. They're not the real ones. But they are. We actually have the real Drivers' Championship trophy and the real Constructors' Championship trophy, which is obviously very much Lewis Hamilton's trophy almost for the last few years. We also get a pit lane walk in there too on the Thursday. And then on Friday night, we take you into something we call Insider Access, which is an appearance. Well, first of all, you get a reception in the very, very lovely Paddock Club. We'll have an appearance by a current Formula One driver. Could be anybody from Haas or Aston Martin. Almost said Racing Point, but they're Aston Martin this year. But really, most of the teams participate in our activities, so we'll have a driver. And then we take you down into the pit lane again, where we have a series of information stations or information stops. And basically, you get, behind the curtain of Formula One, you get those juicy stories, you get hands-on with technology, and we really take you inside the sport. And then, of course, we have our hospitality packages. We do some fantastic access in the Paddock Club itself. And we also have our own product, which we call Champions Club. That is an amazing hospitality facility at 17 venues in 2021. And with that, we have appearances. We have appearances with the Sky Sports commentary team. We also have again, Formula One drivers. We have some old legends of the sport that come up as well and talk to the guests. And we also take people into the paddock. Obviously, with COVID being as it is, some of those activities do turn to more of a digital or a virtual experience. But with the access that we have, we're very fortunate to be able to go places that nobody else can go. So, we really do bring fans closer to the sport than ever before. And those series of packages allow us to do exactly that.
Wow, that sounds amazing. It's really extensive what you can do. And I'm sure the fans appreciate that, to come so close to the racers. So Formula One is unique in the sense that you're hosting events in so many different locations every year. How is the logistics aspect of your work?
Yeah, logistically, it can be quite a challenge at times. Obviously, if you look at the 2021 calendar, the back end of this year means we're going to be operating at 12 venues in 16 weeks. I mean, that presents a little bit of a challenge, not only logistically in terms of getting our equipment from race to race, but also how we staff that as well. I have a fantastic team that works with me that allows us to present and produce all of these experiences. But obviously, you run into a little bit of human fatigue, and we've got to be very careful with how we manage our talent, our staff, and our legends as well, and all of our special guests. So it does become a little bit of a schedule headache as you try and manage the season. But what we do is we work with some amazing partners. Our logistical partners are second to none. They do a great job in advising us on the best routes to take. Some of our equipment will go via sea freight, some of it will go road, some of it will go air. And really, it's a little bit like, I guess, a game of Tetris, just making sure that you can fit everything into the right place at the right time and having it there on time. You know, I've been doing this for a lot of years now, and I think I've encountered everything from earthquakes to floods to typhoons to volcanoes erupting, all sorts of things. But thankfully, you know, when the lights go out, we're there, we're producing, we're happening, and we're making sure the show goes on.
Yes, you mentioned earthquakes. What other aspects do you need to take into consideration when you're hosting events in other countries? I'm thinking cultural differences, natural phenomena, etc.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we have to do a very in-depth risk assessment before we get to any location. And obviously, there are some countries that you go to where, you know, certain events are predisposed. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've been to Japan where there's the threat of a typhoon. And of course, in 2019, we were shut down. I mean, we expected to carry on as normal, and then the alert came through and we had to shut down. You know, we had to take everything down for an entire day and then, you know, build it back up again and get going the next day, which was quite a challenge. But we are always sensitive to where we go in a cultural sense as well, whether that means how we liaise with our clients, whether that means we have certain touches to our menu and our hospitality facilities. Obviously, we have different translators for countries that we go into as well. So we are quite sensitive to the different countries that we work in. But you are correct. There are some where we have to be, you know, extra careful and have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. But again, we've been doing this a long time now. So we're very fortunate in that we have a lot of case histories past that we can look to and go, right, that happened at this stage. So how do we avoid that again?
You've been with Formula One now for 15 years. The year 2020 was obviously a special year. But is there such thing as a normal year in Formula One?
Normal. Let's start with 2020 because we knew there was something coming, this thing called COVID. But I don't think that anybody thought it was going to be as it was. And, you know, we arrived in Melbourne ready for a new season. We were so eager, so ready to go. We had some new technology, some new activities. You know, we were so excited and we had everything set up. And we were ready to go that Friday morning. And just before 9 o'clock, I remember this like it was yesterday. This security guard come bounding up to us, this big burly Australian security guard, and he goes, "Don't open the door, mate. You're going to have to wait." And we're like, what's going on? What's happening? Can't say any more. You're going to have to wait. So we're kind of all just stood there wondering what was going on. And then I kind of dashed off and made a few calls. And then we realized the gravity of the situation. And obviously we knew that some members of the Formula One staff had tested positive to COVID during that week. But we didn't realize how serious it was going to be. So we had hospitality facilities that were all set up, ready to go. They looked beautiful, but we had to tear them down. You know, we couldn't have anybody in there. And then obviously as the weeks rolled on, we realized how serious this was as a global pandemic. And it's certainly not to take anything away from what it has become. But is there such thing as a normal year in Formula One? I don't think you can say that there is, because every year is unique and every year is different. You know, I've been a part of this game now for 15 years. And when I first started, there was 18 races. Now we're pushing 23. And I know that Formula One would love to have 25, 26 races a year. You know, again, back in the day, we would go from race to a test to a private filming session to a private sponsor event. Then we'd go back to another race. And we'd sometimes be on the road for, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks on the trot. But now it's obviously a lot different. But every year is unique. And even though we go to the same tracks over and over again, there's always a unique challenge. It's never the same. You know, you can turn up to a Bahrain, and using just Bahrain as an example, they may have closed an access tunnel. And you're like, okay, fine. So now how do we now get around that? How do we reshape our event and our activity and our access because they've now closed this one tunnel? So they're all different. And I don't think there's any one year that you could say, yeah, that's a normal year.
You need to be flexible, definitely.
Mm.
No such thing as a normal year. You have been to so many different spots. Any favorite place to go when you have been now traveling with Formula One for over 15 years?
I get this question a lot. And obviously, as an Australian who lives in the UK, there's nothing like going home. And I often say this to friends and family, there's something about stepping out in Melbourne when you first exit that airport and you get the smell of Australia. And anybody who's listening to this might not know what I mean. They probably think, what are you talking about? But there's just a unique smell. And I don't know whether it's the eucalyptus or whether I don't know what it is, but there's just a unique smell. So that's the one thing that I look forward to each and every year. And Melbourne is a great city, don't get me wrong. But I think to answer effectively, I love different locations for different things. I love Australia because it takes me home. I love Monza because Monza is so steeped in history. You can go into that circuit, and as soon as you get into that park, you can feel it. And it's romantic to say that, but you just feel it. There's just something about that Italian Grand Prix with the Tifosi and the circuit itself. There's just something about it. Singapore, fantastic country, fantastic race, fantastic activities. Love it. If you want to go and have a really good, I guess, party atmosphere, you go to somewhere like Austin, Texas. I mean, that place just embrace, and the same as Canada in Montreal, they just embrace the race and the whole city gets behind it. And it is just one fantastic week. Monaco, you can't go past that for the glitz and the glamour. So there's different locations that I love for different reasons. I couldn't point to one and go, ugh, I don't like going there, because they're all amazing in their own right. They all have unique aspects, and that's why they've been chosen to be a part of the calendar.
As a fan of the sport myself, I have watched the Netflix series Drive to Survive by, I think it's directed by Will Buxton. It's an amazing documentary, I think, and it really gets you behind the curtains of the Formula One. They show some behind the scenes pictures there, and the Monaco race really seems amazing.
It really is. I mean, it was Nelson Piquet who once said that the Monaco Grand Prix is like riding a bicycle around your living room. And it's true. You literally don't have any room for error. And when you consider these cars are blasting around, a circuit at 200 kilometers an hour plus. And, in some corners, and I remember doing an interview once with Rubens Barrichello, and he said the ideal thing you want to do is when you are passing through the swimming pool chicane, you want to fit a business card between the Armco and the tyre. That's the margin for error that you have. And if you think about how thin a business card is, that gives you an idea of how accurate that they have to be. But Monaco is a unique challenge in itself. Monaco, not only for the drivers, but also, for the teams. The paddock is very small. It's a long way away. The garages are absolutely tiny. A lot of the spare parts are stored, in fact, underneath the yacht club, because we have to have a separate storage facility. Getting around is not as easy as what you think. You can see where you want to go, but with the layout of the circuit and various road closures, it does take a while to get from A to B. But fantastic location, brilliant spectacle with the yachts in the harbour, and it's just one of those locations. I guess if there's a bucket list, it should be on it.
If we talk a little bit about Formula One as a sport, and with your 15 years of experience, how have you seen the sport evolve during the last 15 years?
Greatly. Obviously, I started under the Bernie Ecclestone era when, there wasn't a lot of access. It was just different. It was just managed differently. It was a very different atmosphere. And then when Liberty Media took over, the first thing they did was, opened up that access and allowed people to get in and do what they do. And let's be blunt, F1 experiences wouldn't exist without Liberty Media, because Bernie was very much of the opinion that if you wanted the access, the only way you could get it was to pay an obscene amount of money. And even then, you weren't guaranteed to get access. So, Liberty Media have certainly opened up the sport, not only in terms of allowing people into the paddock and into the pit lanes and onto the main straights, but also things like this. We can talk about this freely and openly now. Back in Bernie's day, you almost had to have his permission to even utter the term Formula One. All the social media, all the stuff they're doing on YouTube. All of these things have changed greatly. From the sport, obviously, it's evolved greatly. I mean, I look at the cars back in 2006 when I first started. There's fins and intakes and outtakes and rakes and this and that. And now you look at them, they look completely different. Obviously, we've had brilliant safety aspects that have evolved, like the halo. When that was first introduced, everybody was like, I'm never watching the sport ever again. It's made the cars look ugly. But now we look at the fact that it's saving lives. And I point to Romain Grosjean.
Yeah.
That saved his life. Yeah. There is no doubt about it. That saved his life. And now we've accepted that. It has moved. It has evolved. The rules have changed. The power units have changed. The tires have changed. I mean, there has been a lot of change within the sport. It's going to change again in 2022. Obviously, we get a rules overhaul. And it's funny, because each time there is a big change in the rules, we normally have one team who gets it right, and they have got it right bang on. You get one team who gets it really, really wrong, unfortunately, but that's always the way it is. And then you get everybody else in the middle who's there or thereabouts. And then over the course of the season, you see how that evolves. And some teams get better, and they challenge that team at the front who got it right. And then unfortunately, there are some teams who get it wrong. And then they start to drop away and they sort of enter the midfield or the back of the pack. It happens every year. Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes. I mean, Mercedes have absolutely nailed it for the last 7 years. But will it change in 22? I think it will. I think that is a big reset for everybody. And it's a chance to get a little bit more competition back into the sport. The budget cap is going to change things dramatically. And I think it can only be a good thing for the sport.
For sure. And I want to go back to what you said about safety. Most sports today are so fast, and that decreases the margin for error. That's why the halo, together with all other safety protocols in place in Formula One, are so important. It really is a lifesaver.
It really is. And again, I've been around long enough now to see a few spectacular crashes in my time. And I was with BMW Sauber when Robert Kubica had that massive accident in Canada. And we watched it unfold on the screens. And I can remember standing there thinking, this is not good, as that car was literally pirouetting through the air, just shedding carbon fiber left, right, and center. Just thinking, this is not good. This is going to end badly. And then when the car finally stopped, I honestly say this, you could have heard a pin drop. Even though with all the noise going on, I think everybody was holding their breath. And then it must have been around about 35 seconds later, he was on the radio. And that relief was just, I can't describe it. It was just an outpouring also of emotion to know that he was okay. On the flip side, I was in Japan when Jules Bianchi had his horrific accident. Just words, I can't even put that into words, just tragic. I wasn't in Bahrain when Romain Grosjean had his accident, but like everybody else, I was sitting on the sofa watching it. And again, that sharp intake of breath and just listening to it happen. And I'm on my phone. I'm WhatsApping everybody I can think of and making calls trying to find out what was going on. And obviously, we got the footage afterwards of him stepping out. I mean, his recovery from that and the fact he survived is, yes, down to the halo, but also down to, and it's a big shout out to them, is Alpine Stars, because they've created all of those incredible technologies that go into the fire suits. If it wasn't for them, it would be a vastly different story. The bodysuit that he wears and the underwear that goes with that, the boots, etc. It has a fire rating at that kind of temperature that he was involved in for 20 seconds. The gloves haven't yet been brought to that standard. They're only 10 seconds. And obviously you can see what's happened to his hands. And in particular, one of them is quite still badly damaged. And I know that he was celebrating the fact that he had his bandages off, which is brilliant, considering what he was involved in.
Yeah, I saw that.
But without those technologies, if you can imagine if the bodysuit had only been 10 seconds, I think we'd be telling a very different story. So safety has definitely evolved over the years. And like I say, it's a huge credit to the FIA. It's a huge credit to Formula One, a huge credit to not only Alpine Stars, but all the other companies that make these fire protection suits. And also a huge shout out to the marshals. In particular, they were Johnny on the spot. And they were there fast, and they were there with extinguishers, and they were doing their best to try and get him out and do what they had to do. And there's no doubt in my mind that they also, everybody collectively saved his life. So we're very lucky to have him alive.
Yeah, definitely. So in addition to the safety, if we look from an experience point of view, how do you feel like the experience for the fan has changed during your time with the Formula One?
Again, quite dramatically. When I first started, there was no such thing really as a fan zone. And it was up to each individual circuit or promoter to try and do something extra for the fans. But, pre-COVID, you would go into these circuits and it's almost like a carnival atmosphere. There's a dedicated fan zone. There's appearances by drivers. There's interactive activities. You can buy merchandise at a racetrack. 10 years ago, that was unheard of. You couldn't buy a team shirt for love nor money. Now you can. Really, again, a huge credit to Liberty Media. They have brought this sport into this modern era, if you will, allowing fans to get closer. And obviously, we're a huge part of that. To be able to take fans inside the sport, take them into the paddock, get them to meet some of their idols, let them touch the technology. It's not unheard of that we'll take people into the pit lane and we'll go and visit a team and they'll bring out a steering wheel and they'll hand it around. You're talking $50,000, $60,000 worth of kit and it's being handed around person to person. They're explaining what those buttons do. Small pieces of technology on a car that they'll hand around to people, stuff you wouldn't normally get to do. Or even standing in a pit lane, inside the pit box where the cars stop, getting hands-on with a pit stop gun. Well, this sort of stuff wouldn't have happened many years ago. So it's certainly evolved and will continue to. We're looking at ways that we can innovate our experiences going into 21 and 22, because there's no doubt 21 is going to be a transition year for us all as the world comes back from COVID. But moving into 2022, we've got some big plans and some exciting features that are going to come up. I can't talk about them now, unfortunately. They are a little bit top secret. But we've got some really good stuff planned that will continue to evolve and will continue to be an interest of fans to Formula One.
In this segment, I want to talk a little bit about you. And first and foremost, because this is the sports management podcast, you as a leader. So what is your leadership style?
Maybe we should ask my staff. My leadership style, I guess, is one of, allowing people to grow. I don't believe in micromanaging people. I think that is a complete and utter waste of time. If you set someone a task and then micromanage them, you might as well just do it yourself.
Yeah.
So the way that we do our Formula One events is I have two fantastic event managers that work under me, Verity and Sam. They are two absolute legends. And what we do is we actually rotate our races and our events between those two. So one will lead one particular event. So what we do is we have our briefing where we say, okay, this is how the race is going to look. These are the events that are taking place. And then they go off with their teams and they create the event. And then we have meetings usually twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week, depending on the size of the event, as to how things are going. I believe that everybody makes mistakes, and that's okay because we learn by mistakes. You can't expect anybody to be perfect. And again, it's an old saying, but someone said it to me many years ago. I don't expect perfection, because if you're looking for perfection, you're kind of barking up the wrong tree, because nobody's perfect. But if you can be 10% better tomorrow or 1% better tomorrow than what you were today, then we're winning. And I also have a AAA approach as well, which is ask, answer, and accountability. So you should ask the question, you should seek the answer, and if you don't, then you should keep seeking that answer until you get it. And then you have the accountability piece as well. So you've got the answer to what you needed. How do you use that to the best of your ability? How are you accountable for that answer? So it's a AAA approach. I have a lot of acronyms. some I probably shouldn't share on here, but we have some acronyms that we use in the office. But I'm very much of the mindset that we've employed experts, and I call them legends, my team of legends, who can do a job really well. There is no point in employing someone who can't do the job, because let's face it, Formula One is the fastest sport on earth, literally. But also we've got 23 events that we have to produce and deliver all fairly quickly. And we need people who are good at what we do. And we're very fortunate in that the entire team is absolutely brilliant at what they do. And it's a pleasure to lead them as well. They are fantastic. And they challenge me on things as well. I should say that. They'll come to me and say, look, I know that we do it this way, but if we do it that way, what do you think about that? And I like that. I think we should always challenge ourselves, challenge each other's, and also lead by example. I wouldn't expect any of the team to do something that I wouldn't do myself. And I'm quite often found hanging over the side of a yacht, putting on a sticker, zip tying, wayfinding signs at 3 o'clock in the morning to get people to where they need to get if it's fallen down or whatever, or, delivering tickets or whatever it might be. I think that's important as well. Sitting back and just expecting everybody to do everything for you, I don't think is a good way to lead. It's one in, all in. And that's an ethos that's carried through the entire company of Quint Events and Formula One. We all muck in and we make it happen.
Sounds good. Something else that we have touched upon a lot in this podcast is a mentor and mentorship. Have you had a mentor in your career, or maybe now are you a mentor for someone?
I'm not a mentor for anybody at the moment, but I do, I guess, have a mentor of sorts, and that is Keith Bruce. And he is the president of the international division of Quint Events. And Keith is, again, a legend and a giant in the sports entertainment community. Keith Bruce led the consortium and led Super Bowl 50 in the United States, which absolutely changed the way Super Bowl is delivered. Again, groundbreaking things that he introduced. And he's been involved in many other companies like Sportsmark, for example. And we're lucky to have him. Keith is a visionary. He is an amazing person just to talk to. And if I ever get in a corner where I'm a bit like, I don't know how to proceed here, 5 minutes with him and you've got the answer.
Wow.
He is such an exceptional mind. Again, we're lucky to have him as a part of our company. And I'm lucky, very lucky, to have him in the same office as me.
Wow. Sounds great. Maybe also a future guest on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the insights he will give you, and some of the stories he can tell, and he's extremely well connected. I can't even begin to tell you the amount of times we can say, we're talking to this person. Oh yeah, I know him. Yeah. Such and such. Yeah. I used to work with this guy at such and such and such. He's amazing. So definitely a future interview subject.
Sounds great. As we said before, Formula One is very complex, and your work is also complex to bring these events from country to country. I'm sure there has been bumps on the road, but can you tell us about any of them and how you overcame them?
There's been a few bumps in the road over the years, and I think there's been things such as 2 days before we were due to have guests on board a yacht in Monaco, the yacht went technical and had to be removed. So it was a scramble to try and find a new yacht to host 140 people over consecutive days. So there's things like that. Obviously, when I was with the McLaren team, we had the volcano erupting. That certainly presented a few challenges because thankfully it was after the event, but the Chinese Grand Prix, but we couldn't get people home. Myself, I was curled up in a hotel room for the best part of 10 days. So trying to keep people, motivated and inspired during that time was an interesting thing to undertake. But, I think there are always bumps in the road. Sometimes they might not be that big. It could be something as simple as, our credential may not have been coded correctly and a guest might be waiting to get in, but their pass doesn't work. That's a relatively easy fix. And that's a bit of a clerical error. That's an easy one. But when you have, and this has happened before, you have freight that doesn't turn up. It's been held in customs. You have things that you just can't locate. The delivery note says it's here, but it's not here. And unfortunately, there are some countries that we go into that things go walkabout, as we say in Australia. They just go missing. You'll have gifting items, some high-value gifting items, and once it gets to customs, it gets opened for inspection. I use the term loosely, and then there's 10 less than what you packed. So a top tip for everybody is always include an extra 10 or 20 if you're sending high-value items. These things happen. These things happen all the time, but it's how you react to them. You can throw your hands in the air and go, "Oh my God, this is all just too much, and I can't cope with this." And it's how you cope. It's how you deal with it, and it's how you move forward from there. Whether it's your hospitality suite hasn't turned up, how do you then deal with that? If a pass doesn't work, as I say, that's an easy one. But it's how you work, not only as a leader, but also as a team. And we're very good at overcoming last-minute.coms, as we call them.
I think that if you are a person that throws their arms in the air and said, we cannot do this, maybe you are not Formula One material.
Well, I think it's definitely, you're in the wrong business, that's for sure. But not only in Formula One, but, also sports management. I mean, this kind of industry moves so fast. And not just because it's motorsport, but it does move so fast, and you need to be able to react to that and overcome all kinds of adversities, not only just on event or on experience or whatever it might be, but whether they be, personal, business, whatever. It's how you react to those and how you adapt to the situation, I think, is a true test of your character.
Leaving Formula One for a moment, you also have a very interesting side gig as a voiceover actor.
Yeah, I was waiting to come up.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a little bit of an unusual journey into sports management and into Formula One. So when I left high school, and we're going back a long time, way before you were born, I would bet, Marcus. But when I left high school, I wanted to become a radio DJ. And so I trained for that and was very fortunate to host breakfast programs in my home state of Western Australia. And I started off very small, started off in community radio stations and then went to a radio station in the country, the Outback. And I remember being very excited because I had 35,000 listeners. And I thought, that was it, I've made it. This is amazing. And then over time, was very fortunate to be able to be promoted to the network hub, which was where all the broadcasts went out all over the state. And I ended up heading up a breakfast program that went all over the States, and we were rated number one. And I thought that was just amazing. But one day, I got a little bit tired of getting up at 3:00 in the morning, going to bed at 8:00 at night. It wasn't something that I wanted to do anymore. So I seeked out an alternative career, and that's kind of how I landed into Formula One. But doing the voiceover stuff, that's how it started. So I started doing it as a part of my radio career, and then I've just kept it up. And I voiced everything over the years, from sheep dip commercials through to political messaging, on-hold telephone systems, cinema trailers. I can do characters and things like that as well. So I've got a home studio here at my house, and I also have a kit that I take with me as well. So if I ever get one of those last-minute requests, I can set it up in my hotel room and do a quick voiceover. It doesn't interfere with my day job, if you will. A lot of my voiceover work is done at night. Once I get my children into bed and the house is quiet, I get my crazy voice on, and we do some good stuff. But really, it's just an interest. It's just something for me, something away from the sport, something that I don't want to brag and sound like a muppet here, but something I'm good at. So why not? If you do it and you enjoy it, I think that's something that's good and something you should do for yourself. For sure. You said the crazy voice on. Anything you can share here? Well, a bit of a strange one was going back to when the new Star Wars films were coming out. So back in, what was that, 97, 99. I remember being approached by a rather large company because they expected Jar Jar Binks to become the new number one character of Star Wars. But unfortunately for Ahmed Best and for George Lucas, it didn't quite turn out that way. But what they needed was somebody within Australia who could do the voice. So I was sent a few bits and bobs and had to mimic Jar Jar Binks, and went into the studio and recorded various bits and pieces. But now I can just drop into Jar Jar Binks at any time, which I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but to be able to Mr. Jar Jar Binks, it sounds better once it's processed, and I need to practice.
Oh, that was great.
But it's all kinds of different accents and characters, and Dr. Claw from Inspector Gadget. I don't know whether you'll be able to pick this up. I'll have a go. Hang on. I'll get you next time, Gadget. Things like that. Things like that. It's just something that I just do for a bit of fun, really. I try not to take myself too seriously with anything, but particularly the voiceover stuff. It's just about having a good time.
It sounds like a fun side gig. It
really is. And again, I'm very fortunate that I have a fantastic agent, Simone at SN Voices. Give her a shout out. She's great, and we've worked on a few things together which have been really exciting. And yeah, who knows what the future holds? But it's just something that I just do in my spare time. There's not a lot of it. Not a lot of spare time. Time that I do have, I use effectively.
I see. Going back to Formula One, we are now in 2021. If we look ahead to later this year and 2022, what can we look forward to from the Formula One Experiences team?
Well, for the Formula One Experiences team, we are going to do what we do best, which is bring people closer to Formula One than ever before. And obviously, COVID being still present in our lives, it'll look slightly different. We can't shy away from that. We might not have the same sort of access that we would have had in years previous, but what we are going to do is look at ways that we can explore what we do have access to. So, for example, appearances may become virtual. They may become over Zoom or something like that. But we do have a significant amount of access that I guess normally wouldn't be available to us. We're very fortunate to be able to work closely with Formula One, to be able to get behind the scenes, to go to the places that people don't normally see. The FIA timing room, the podium, the television center, all these places, inside of teams, inside of garages. So we'll continue to do that. And as I say, as we evolve into 2022, huge plans. Can't talk about them at the moment, but some big plans about how we evolve what we do. We can't stay still. If a Formula One team stands still, then they go backwards. We're the same. We have to innovate. We have to constantly think on our feet. We have to look at ways that we can, continue to evolve what we do. Formula One has a huge fan base, and it means something different to every person. So it's about how we can tap into that and make it special for everyone.
I look forward to see that, and I hope that sometime in the future you might come to Sweden also here, so I can go to some events.
I'd love a Formula One race in Sweden. Let's talk to someone and make it happen.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
We touched upon it a little bit before when you mentioned Keith, but is there someone that you think that I should interview next if you could choose the next guest?
Oh, if I could choose the next guest, who would I pick? I mean, Keith Priest would definitely be at the top of a very short list, definitely. Who I'd like to hear from, and purely because we're inside of Formula One and we're talking about F1, I'd really love to hear from Ross Brawn. Now, Ross Brawn sits obviously at Formula One, and he's the head of sport for F1 and sort of all of the technical regulations and how it all works in partnership with the FIA. Ross has an incredible amount of stories to tell. And an incredible mind as well, let's face it. So if there was an opportunity to speak to Ross Brawn, I would certainly encourage that. And the other one as well, a little bit left of field, is Damon Hill. Damon Hill is a marvelous person to speak to, and he tells it how it is. Obviously, his journey in Formula One, following in his father's footsteps. He was a little bit older when he won his championship. Remember, he was 36 years of age when he won his Formula One World Championship. Compare that to Lewis Hamilton, who's just turned 36 and has won 7. Now, that's not taking anything away from Damon Hill. That's literally just saying that Lewis Hamilton really is, still probably in the peak of his career. What is he going to do? Is he going to get 8? Is he going to get 10? Is he going to get 12? I mean, we'll have to wait and see. But Damon, he tells it how it is, and he'll talk through his entire career from starting out through to the death of Ayrton Senna, his period at Williams, how all that evolved, moving on to Jordan after F1 as well. So, yeah, a great character, and I definitely recommend Ross and Damon Hill, and of course Keith, as future interview subjects.
Wow, very good tips. 3 good names. I'll keep that in mind.
For sure.
Is there something that I haven't asked you that you would like to mention?
I guess as you're starting out in your career, you can get a lot of advice from a lot of different people. Follow your dream, all that kind of thing. Yes and no to a point. I think what you need to do really is you stop, you look at yourself, and you believe in you. If you firmly believe that you have what it takes to succeed in whatever it is that you want to do, then you will. I look at the fact that I wanted to be on the radio. Back in the day, I mumbled. I had a stutter. I didn't think it was possible, but I did it. And I now have a pretty good side voiceover career as a part of that. I never thought in a million years that a young kid from the back end of Western Australia would ever be holding a position that I do within Formula One. And here I am. I believed in myself. You take a lot of steps back along the way. You get a lot of knocks. Don't get me wrong. It hasn't been an easy path, but I believed in myself. And I think that's what you need to do. If there is something that you firmly believe in and you want it, then work hard. Accept the criticism. Take the knocks, but keep pushing forward and you will succeed.
That's great advice and a great way to end this episode. James, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about Formula One and your career. It was very interesting, and I look forward to talk to you more in the future.
Absolute pleasure, and good luck with the podcast series, and look forward to chatting again soon.
Thanks so much. Thank you for listening to Sports Management Podcast. Do you have thoughts or ideas about this podcast, or do you know someone that I should interview next? Please reach out to me on sportsmpodcast@gmail.com or visit my website sportsmanagementpodcast.com. If you prefer social media, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram at sportsmpodcast.